So Kelvin, I'd like to formally welcome you to today's conversation about urban libraries and how they work and how they're both unique and different within the US library ecosystem. For folks who are joining us, if you don't already know, Kelvin Watson joined the Las Vegas Clark County Library earlier this year. He came there from Broward County. Kelvin serves as the library representative on the Book Industry Study Group's board of directors. He's had that role now for more than 3 years, and is part of the reorganization that we did in 2018 to make sure that we had segment-specific representation across the board. He's the first person to have that role and has brought an important library perspective to everything that BISG does, not just on the board, but also in some of our programming and our thinking about how to best talk about libraries. We wanted to invite him today to talk about specifically the Urban Libraries Council. So maybe we can start there by asking you, what is the Urban Libraries Council? Who does it represent? And how is it actually governed?
So the Urban Library, thank you, Brian, for having me as well, and welcome everyone. So the Urban Libraries Council has spent more than 40 years enriching communities by strengthening and promoting the value of libraries as essential public assets. So it serves all ages and are located in over 150 library systems, including my library system, from major urban areas across the US as well as Canada. Public sector institutions. So there's a mix of governance structures that make up our urban libraries, which is, the communities with populations of different sizes. Some of them actually ranging approximately from 30,000 in population to more than 8 million residents. So you're talking LA County, you're talking the New York Publics. And the council centers around education and lifelong learning. Some other areas we focus on are economic and workforce development, health, wellness, public safety, environmental sustainability. One other initiative that we talked about or we're looking at is artificial intelligence. So we're trying to think about how things that socially, economically affect our communities and affect libraries, how Urban Libraries Council can play a role in that. The board is comprised of member library directors. There's trustees of the libraries and or library foundations, and as well as members from the public who are civic, business, government, or who are involved in philanthropy. The 2021-2022 executive board is comprised of 16 members. There's 5 executive officers and 11 executive board members. And the president and CEO of the Urban Libraries Council is currently Susan Benton, who's a good friend of mine as well. So that's a little bit about the Urban Libraries Council and how it, who it represents, and how it's governed. If you can, again, think of that 150 library systems, all coming from the major urban areas. That's pretty significant. So there's a voice from all around the country, and as I said, including urban libraries in Canada are also included.
And thank you for that. And maybe more generally, how do the needs of urban libraries differ from public libraries as a whole? I mean, you've worked in a number of different settings. Yeah. So there probably is no one answer, but I'm just wondering, are there some unique challenges and opportunities for urban library directors?
I think for urban library directors, we all, as library directors, whether we recognize it or not, have some type of political aspects that impacts us, right? So it either directly or indirectly impacts us, even when you're not in for example, a government entity. For example, I've worked for 3 large urban libraries, all who were part of UOC. So I've worked at the Queens Library, I've worked at Broward County Libraries, and now at Las Vegas Clark County Library District. And one of the things that I'll tell you is that we are all those library systems were governed differently. or we received our finances. Broward, we were a county agency, so we received our money from the county. So we were directly politically impacted. Here in Las Vegas, I am my own library district. So essentially, I'm the size of a small city. My library system is, and so and I don't report directly into any city, county, or government agency. My board of trustees are made up of appointees from those, but so that the differences are, when you have some of the smaller rural libraries that are pretty much reporting into cities, and some of them are counties. They don't all participate in ULC, but certainly the things that ULC represents impacts the 150 library systems as well as all of the library systems. So that's what I'll say, Brian, is that our impact is, because it's a paid membership that you have to pay. So
Right.
that's so the things that we do impacts everybody. Around those things that I talked about: health, education, lifelong learning, economics, and workforce. And what EOC does is it kind of brings together this brain trust, and that brain trust then kind of talks about and comes up with ideas and works with those the politics side. And again, it plays that role, again, either directly or indirectly, in what we do as libraries and library leaders.
You started talking about some of the issues that are front and center for the Urban Libraries Council. And I think a couple of things that you haven't delved into, but there are things like book-rich environments as a priority, library school partnerships for early literacy, which is obviously of strong interest to the publishing business, but in particular, equitable public access to ebooks, which has been not just an Urban Libraries Council, but also an ALA priority. How are those priorities set, and what do you think is on the horizon? Are they going to stay in place through 2022, or has the pandemic shifted the thinking about them?
The priorities are set based primarily on what's happening, in our environment, in the urban libraries environment. If you remember some of the changes that were happening with ebooks and how those changes were going to impact us, such as not just the lending models, but for example, when publishers were making decisions around, boycotting titles, or not letting libraries, have access to those ebooks. Those certainly were things that impacted the libraries directly. And so, because ULC is a member-driven organization, if those issues affected us, though, that's how the priorities were set and are set. So sometimes the priorities certainly shift, as with any organization, because we were dealing with ebooks as the primary issue, and then COVID happened. So we then shifted, and now COVID was and is the something that we're primarily focused on. We're still focused on the ebook issues because libraries, public libraries, and libraries in general have really expanded our digital, our digital resources and our digital resource offerings, virtual programming. And so as a result of COVID, ebooks is still one of the, another top priority for us to focus on. I would say the partnerships with schools are also a priority for us to partner, for us to focus on, because of the, and I would say it was a priority before COVID, right? But then COVID kind of, I don't want to make this a COVID conversation, certainly, but that then impacted public library, school library relationships. Again, the politics are involved because of school boards and, elected officials who are on county and city governments. But we needed to figure out a way as a public library to, if we weren't already working very closely with our schools, we then needed to put practices in place where we could work more closely with schools to deliver ebooks, especially with schools being shuttered or where there was no in-person education going on pretty much all of last year, and so that's still a priority. I mean, I tell you, one of the things that is challenging with with COVID, with the digital resources, with what's happening with our economy, the challenges that we're going to be facing from the UOC is finding sustainable funding, to
Right.
to continue to invest in those digital resources. We still have to invest in those physical resources and physical infrastructures, because libraries aren't shutting our doors. We have more and more people coming into libraries and or leveraging libraries. For example, we're doing COVID testing in my parking lot here at my location, right?
I hope they don't put that on your shoulders.
So no, it actually, it's a partnership with the Southern Nevada Health District.
Right.
So we are offering them the space, and so that's where libraries come in. We come into play as well. So we make the things that are happening in our communities a priority, right? COVID testing, COVID shots. In some cases, there are urban libraries that are actually delivering or having delivered, COVID vaccinations in the libraries. We as a public library here in Las Vegas, we became a substitute for the schools. So when schools were closed last year, we implemented a program in conjunction with the city of Las Vegas and schools called VSA, where there was school classes taking place in our libraries. And then we also worked with an organization called 3 Square to make sure that children who were no longer going to schools to get, where children had the opportunity to, to get meals, for example. For example, there, as you know, and others know, that's another issue, right? In primarily urban areas, but urban and rural areas where there's a food deficit or food issues going on, where children aren't being fed. So libraries then become a place where that happens as well. So we were then doing 2 services. So, the funding, though, that's going to be the opportunity for us to build stronger partnership with funders, to look at our resources that we offer, right? I'm balancing, digital resources versus physical. We are continuing to try to get the most out of those investments, such as, expanding those digital resources beyond, or communicating those digital resources beyond our current customer base, because we've invested so much money in them that we need to now get the return on investment by using them, right? By having making sure that the cost per circulation goes down by making sure that those resources are used. So I'm launching programs to do that, like a recent one where we did with our regional transit commission here, where we're going to be offering digital access to digital resources via our 400 buses. So urban libraries, we think about all of these, all of these things, and we're thinking about serving people from 0 to, I don't know that number, right? I won't say 99, I won't say 100, whatever that number is. That's my focus. And the Urban Libraries Council, those are the things that we discuss as library leaders. We actually have a listserv that we share, communicate, on numerous topics. One of the things that I know you got some other questions, Brian, but I'm just thinking of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And accessibility. That's another major issue that we are discussing. Again, the things that impact our communities. We are at the Urban Libraries Council, with my library system, having these communications and trying to work on solutions, finding solutions, but also sharing amongst ourselves, best practices.
Yeah, and I think that you and I have talked a little bit about my own non-urban experience serving on the library board of trustees, but I'm fortunate in the state of New Jersey where I live that there's a minimum tax rate, a mill rate, that libraries are required to be funded at. But even that that's the minimum, not necessarily taking into consideration the social safety net and other responsibilities that any library has, particularly an urban one. Before I do ask you the next question, I just want to let people know we do have time today for questions. So if you have any for Kelvin, whether it's about urban libraries or about why he decided to move from a wet heat to a dry heat, he's game for any of them. You can do that by posting something in the Q&A. You can also add it to the chat. It's just a little bit easier for us to keep track of it if it's in the Q&A. One thing I wanted to go back to, in particular, you were talking about the initiatives like AI and digital citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
I think some at least, and I think probably varying by library, much of what urban libraries do promotes citizen knowledge and awareness, whether it's civic engagement or just simply meeting their needs where they are. But I think about AI and digital citizenship. You have a library stand tall effort that shares stories about work that promotes civic understanding. Do you want to talk a little bit about those kinds of initiatives? And also, is there a place for the book business in that? Should we be doing more to help urban libraries kind of promote civic engagement, particularly at this time in our country's history?
Yeah, I think I'll talk about the AI and digital citizenship first, and then I'll move into the other about answering all of the questions about citizenry overall. I think that for libraries, and this is what the interesting story that I'll tell is I actually started this this conversation about AI with Susan Benton at ULC. So I called Susan and I said, hey, there was one of my library advisory board members at Broward that had some concerns about AI and what libraries were doing, and just wanted to know, was this something that we would be having on our strategic plan, and focusing on not just AI when it comes to how it impacts the community, but how are we going to be training and retraining people that lived in our community, primarily a hospitality community, or a hospitality employment community around AI. And so that's how this AI conversation started. And so ULC took it up and pulled together some thought leaders around that, including myself, and working to really become and demonstrate that libraries are really thought leaders and essential community resources when it comes to AI, not just on education, educating the community around how AI impacts us with like our with our cell phones, or with Amazon and Netflix and all the machine learning that goes on, and and how AI how AI is intertwined into that. But just really realizing that the AI revolution is here. It's here now. AI is not in the future. And I think that's where people get that misnomer. It's right here, right? Tesla, Google, those, doing all the work that they're doing. And so, for the role of libraries, our role is to make sure that our communities have the tools, right? That they're prepared, and we have the resources, and we're responsible not only again in making sure that we have safe digital citizens around technology, but that also that as AI continues to rapidly evolve, that libraries are right there in that conversation. We're at the forefront of it. I actually during COVID myself took an AI certification course from MIT. So yeah, if that's it, and I took one in machine learning, Brian. But you know me, but so that I could really look at that. And one of the services that we offered at Broward, which was sort of AI, right? It's to be some of AI, but it's leveraging the Amazon Echo devices.
Right.
So I put as part of my library system, I put Amazon Echo devices at every service point in my 38 library locations. And the goal was to help with that digital citizenship. It was around communicating. We actually leveraged it to communicate to, we called it the project, we called it Project Welcome. And so Project Welcome was built around communicating with people coming to the US or here in the US who didn't speak English well. And we could leverage the Amazon Echo Dot. Actually, it's the Amazon Echo Dot for business, not the one that I have on my desk right now, which is my personal, like the personal one, but there's a business one where you can actually, really teach the device. And actually, we were able to help with translation services, leveraging the Amazon Echo Dot. So when I tell you that AI is here, it's happening. That's one example that I just gave, how libraries can play, libraries play a role in it. I think when it comes to content, and I need to think about or hear from more from our publisher colleagues. One of my ideas around AI for libraries is to have libraries, even with, I think there's the privacy issues and some of those concerns, right? But you can, I think there's ways to get around, some of those if you're not using PII, but really using the data in a way to make suggestions to Brian if he's, by leveraging, again, machine learning and AI, but actually being able to offer you recommendations like an Amazon does or like a Netflix does when it comes to you participating, in a cookbook program. So, you go to a cooking class, right, that we have, and then you also check out cookbooks, and that we're able to use that data to then inform you about upcoming cooking classes and inform you and make recommendations to you about, the next, the next Food Network cookbook that's being, published or something, right? And that's kind of, some of my ideas around leveraging AI. But then I also foresee that we'll have, more robots involved in libraries, and actually being able to, shelve books for us, right? And actually be able to put them back. And now, this is what I wrote my paper on, but that's what I'm thinking, that this is where we're going to be able to go with artificial intelligence, right? You already got some of the things, like you got the Roomba thing, right? That knows how to navigate and understands how to clean your house. Why couldn't we also have a robot in the library being able to reshelve books in a similar manner? So, that's what I think about AI and digital citizenship. Just some of the things that, libraries, we have that, and it's this technology wave. We're a part of it. We're here. if COVID didn't teach folks anything, libraries were actually at the forefront of like having, we were already having virtual conferences well before,
Right.
a lot of people started using. So we were already, libraries were already familiar with having those types of things. So we didn't have, the learning curve wasn't steep to jump on and have Zoom calls and, participate in WebEx and have an entire conference that way. As far as libraries participating in, civil discussions around what's happening, around, socially, what's happening in our communities, I think libraries, and know that libraries, we're the conveners of those conversations. We can be, we are, I participated in a panel a few years ago that says the title when Jim Neal was ALA president, the topic was, are libraries neutral? My answer is yes and no.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. I think we are neutral and can be neutral when we have to be the convener of these conversations, when we need to have these difficult conversations in and around our communities, around democracy and inclusion and tolerance and those things. But I think where we aren't maybe sometimes neutral is when we let our own selves get involved there and kind of put our own thoughts, and we lose that being neutral. I think we aren't neutral when it comes to we shouldn't be. Let me say that we shouldn't. I was going to say something, but I know there's library boards and other places that are banning books and doing all this other stuff. So I would say, our neutrality is also included when we, when we think about our collections, right? At least for me, I'll say that for me, right? I'm neutral on the topic, right? And say, I will have everything in the collection, right? Regardless of what it is, I'm neutral in that, even if I disagree with the topic. And that's where I think libraries, we play that, we have that role in our communities and should be, that's who we are. We are that place where that can take place and should take place. I was once asked about, would I let the Ku Klux Klan speak at one of my libraries? And my answer was yes. And that's a hard. Yeah, I mean, that's me being in my role as a library leader, as a librarian, and not as Kelvin personally, and leaving my personal thoughts at the door. And again, I think that's who we are.
Sorry, I have a bit of background noise, but I was just going to make the observation that the solution to objectionable speech ultimately is more speech, and I think that's a pretty well established norm among libraries.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, it is specific to BISG. So at our core, we're a supply chain organization, and you've actually had supply chain roles. You've worked for a distributor, as well as for libraries. But I want to ask with your library hat on, what kinds of things do your upstream partners, we're talking about publishers, wholesalers, and distributors, service providers, get wrong about urban libraries? And what do they get right?
Interesting question. So I think what they get wrong about us is they sometimes think we primarily only want to buy the bestsellers. I think that's what they get wrong about us, and that we're not really seeking sometimes a diverse collection. And we sometimes only want to hear from what's hot, and that's not true. I think that's kind of that's what they get wrong. I think what they get right is that, and I think this is sometimes more for the smaller and mid-sized publishers, and it's also it's like the what I'm going to say, what I kind of what I just said, in the opposite way, is that for those mid-sized and small publishers, what they get right is they recognize the impact that libraries can have, when it comes, if they work with libraries, what they can, the impact that they can have, in and around the authors, or or taking a look at, their offerings. Libraries are the place to give people that opportunity, give people that chance. And I think that's what is sometimes right. I think, and I don't want to, I don't want to offend anybody, Brian, but I'll say sometimes it feels like larger publishers take libraries for granted, take urban libraries for granted. And that's how I see it. I think, what we're in a strange place with COVID, especially as we move to more ebooks. And, we have all of these, different, digital models. And I think where we can be successful and continue our a strong partnership with publishers, again, are to look at opportunities where we can have, I mean, I'm going to talk about digital here, more simultaneous use content, right? Where we're able to share, content. And I know there's publishers out there that do that and offer it. And I buy a ton of it, and have for years. I'm really supportive of it. But that, as we come out of COVID, I think having those authors and publishers work with our libraries and our communities to help develop the future authors and talk about the successes and challenges. That's something that I'm dealing with right now, or trying to think about, is an opportunity for partners, is an opportunity for partnership. And that, I think about Selfie, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with Selfie, Brian, but Selfie, the self-publishing program.
Mitchell, the Biblio Lab.
Yeah. But even before, even before Mitchell, it was, when Library Journal was like really behind it. I know Mitchell was there, but Library Journal was really the face of it for, at some point, right?
Right.
I think that was great, right? And that was, I think, getting and then the focus on diverse voices. That's another aspect. And I've talked about, I mentioned like several things in that string, but one of the, those are a few things that I think about. I mean, we, as you said, I've been on the distribution side. I work for Borders, the bookstore chain. And I worked in libraries. And so, yeah, I have this somewhat of a unique experience, but I have a realistic experience as well, right? So these are things that I actually saw and experienced that I can actually sometimes talk to. Is like I think so I recognize the opportunity when it comes to where we are with digital and what we can do and what we can do better than what we sometimes didn't do well when it came to physical.
Yeah. I think of you as your own supply chain, with at least your career. There's a related question that's come in from Jennifer. Jennifer works at a university press, and she's asking, what can publishers do to make urban libraries and library patrons more aware of open access ebooks, which would certainly help on the budget side, but
Yeah.
I mean, they tend to have small audiences.
Yeah, I'm recently looking at, I'm currently looking at a resource with one of our partners, and one of our partners, who's actually not in the supply chain. Actually, they're an integrated library systems provider, but they are getting into the content business, and they've aggregated a lot of this open access ebook content, and they're offering it to libraries as a package. And I think that is so, what I would say to, the publishers to make libraries more aware of this open access content is that the publishers need to or would have to work with one of our partners, like a library partner who's already in the library space, specifically like this ILS vendor, or even one of the current the current book vendors like a Ingram or a B&T, for example, that or an Overdrive, right, that works with libraries, and come up with, become part of the packages that are offered to libraries, because the one-offs are going to be harder for us, right? Because we got, thousands of different, databases sometimes that we offer, right? Which would be how the customers, the patrons would get to those ebooks. But if they're all packaged together, which is the resource that I'm currently looking at, there's thousands of it already together. So I only have to go to one partner, one entry point. And so that would be my suggestion on how to make libraries, essentially urban libraries, public libraries. I think on the academic side, they may be more open, but I think they also would like it if it's all aggregated as well, because it just makes more sense to from the aggregation standpoint.
Yeah, and there are opportunities for publishers to consider libraries as marketing partners, I imagine. But you still have to, if you work through an aggregator, it's going to make ordering and management a lot simpler.
It does.
You've mentioned that you've served in library leadership roles in New York in the public library, or actually in Queens, which is different, Broward County, and now Las Vegas. I imagine that there's both similarities and differences. What are the things that you've found across those three systems that are similar as large urban libraries?
Yeah, I was going to say large. That would be the one thing, right? So the similarities have been, just about librarians as a profession. I am probably, as you know and have said, not the most traditional librarian. I didn't come through the traditional path. I didn't work at the circulation desk. I didn't shelve books or anything. I was in library leadership from the onset. And so the similarities would be the change management that has to take place with moving libraries into the future, right? Queen, that's the similarity, right? That's just similar across the board. It's difficult in a lot of ways to have libraries sometimes really, and this is what I'm talking about. I'm more talking about the staff holistically take hold of the vision,
right?
Be aspirational, be innovative, think like a business. I think that so the similarities are would be that's where you have to, that's where I've been at all three of those, even at different levels though, right? And that's been the difference is, similar is like being aspirational, thinking about the future, and getting everybody to buy into the vision, and to think that think like a business. I think I treat libraries like businesses, and try to operate it almost like a business. Especially when you have the large library systems. Queens had 1,500 people that worked for Queens, 700 plus that worked in Broward, and I've got 700 plus that work here with me in Las Vegas. those are fairly large staffs of individuals to kind of get all on the same page. And so that would be the similarities. I think when it comes to, there's, to be honest, there's more differences than there are similarities. As I'm thinking about it, I'm like,
Yeah.
I can mention like differences. I know that might be not, that's the next, kind of one of the questions I think, but that differences would be, you would think that Queens would be spending more on the collection, on our collections, right, than Broward and or Las Vegas. And that's actually not true. Queens spent about the same amount of money on the collection that Broward did. And Broward being pretty much twice the size, and twice the budget, twice the overall budget. But when it came to collection spending, Queens didn't spend as much on the collection as Broward. And Las Vegas, which is smaller than both Broward and Queens, spends more. And I say significantly more, actually. We spend significantly more on our collections than either one of those organizations. We also buy more movies here and DVDs than probably any library system in the country. And that's been something that goes all the way back, historically. When I was when I was at Ingram and Las Vegas was a client of ours, a customer of ours, Las Vegas bought a lot of VHS, and still today, the makeup of people who borrow DVDs as compared to those other two library systems, Las Vegas surpasses them significantly.
So there, it sounds like there's a lot of community differences that each library system has to be respect.
Yes, yeah. And so Broward was think about Queens, right? There was 60, we were in Queens, we're in the borough of Queens with 65 plus locations, right? Branches, not including the other outlets that we had. But then you think about Broward County, right? And think about it spread out north and south, north all the way up to Palm Beach, south all the way down to Miami, and then spreading out to the Everglades. Here in Vegas, we cover 8,000 square miles. So, my northernmost library is like 2 hours away from here, from Las Vegas, and my southernmost is 2 hours away as well. And so that's, again, those are some significant differences in the community, how it's spread out. The more urban areas, Brian, I got a library that's located in an area called Sandy Valley, doesn't even have a gas station or a grocery store.
The gas up before you visit.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. That's why I mentioned that. So those are so you're different. So you're dealing with different clientele, different education levels, different employment, different type of the employment, how people are employed, or the reemployment opportunities. So again, there's more differences in those three urban libraries than there are similarities, actually.
And that's, I think, a message that people should take away today, is that while we can talk about urban libraries as a concept, and certainly there are common initiatives that you described, there are differences that are as simple as each community and even the shape of each district.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question before we turn to the audience, and that's it's actually to ask you something with your board hat, BISG board hat on. Both in our committee structure and on the board, we're expected to represent the breadth of the industry. So we have 6 different segments, and we changed the structure of the board in 2017 to address that. So for the last 3.5 years, you've really served as the board's formal representative for the library community. So my hard question is, how are we doing actually in bringing the supply chain together, and where could we do better? Because I think that we play an important role, and I'm not quite sure that we're doing it as well as we can, at least from a library perspective.
You know, I'll say this. I'll say I was familiar with BISG many years. I've been in, as you said, I've been in supply chain. Though I wasn't a member of BISG, I was certainly familiar with BISG and the work of BISG. And having added the library representative and the library programming that BISG has done over the last 3+ years has been significant to me, right? Having again not seen it for most of my career,
Right.
and I've worked in and around libraries, even though I wasn't in libraries. So I'll say that we've come a long way in doing that. I think so we're doing that. We're doing better, Brian. We're doing better. We've come to a place, we can certainly do better, and the opportunities to do better. I don't know if the opportunities to do better are going to come during this time frame that we're dealing with, where we're not able to, unfortunately, see each other and and be participate with each other. But I think what we could do better is tie into some of those library communities that we haven't really connected as well with. Right? We focus kind of on the partnership with ALA.
Yeah.
But I think the opportunity to educate our library community needs to expand, be outside of ALA, and maybe focus and drill down on those individual areas that are part of ALA, like maybe Elise, for example, or RUSA, or the National Libraries of Color, for example, PLA, right? I think
Right.
those are maybe the ways to, because it's really about education, right? It's really about education, right? I knew about BISG because of my supply chain experience in, working for a wholesale distributor and a bookstore, and understood BISAC, right? I knew what BISAC was, right? Right. From many years ago, right? But there are so many libraries and library colleagues that don't. I think having the opportunity to, present more at those conferences, both virtually and in person. Again, it's around in education, right? It's looking at what we don't look at currently, like the Internet Librarians Conference, right? Which is
Right.
right, or computers in libraries, right? Which is those are two library conferences. I don't think they're on our radar. I don't know if they're on your radar, but those are ways that we need to continue to educate. I mean, it's about I think it starts with education, and again, and highlighting some libraries that are doing things that are in connection with the BISG's work, like Gwinnett County, right? So Gwinnett County leveraged, BISAC to do their collection, for example, right? But I don't recall, when I was reading the article, and it's been some time now, I don't recall BISG really being mentioned, in that communication, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
It's
those
a,
are just a couple of thoughts today.
yeah, I think that's an important point, and it's one to take to heart, because we do show up in certain things. I think of the work that was done in 2018 led by Veronda Pitchford and Steve Spohn,
Mm-hmm.
to have a conversation about digital content, and there were several different aspects to that.
Right.
But we got an opportunity. I had an opportunity at their invitation to speak at that event, and I said that if any library attending wanted to join BISG, go to our committees, participate in the conversations, they were free to. And people were both surprised by the offer, but also surprised by the breadth of things that we do. And marketing, when I first started, I think our bigger problem was the breadth of things that we do. I think now it certainly is a combination of marketing and communications that we could do better.
Yeah.
And we haven't put those organizations on our radar. So I have a few minutes for questions, and I have one, and this is from Dan, and he's just asking, could you share some thoughts regarding the share of eligible residents in Queens, Broward, and Vegas that have library cards? Is that something that you have at the top of your head?
I think I do. I used to do and still do analysis around this so that I can understand like a lot. And actually, there's a conversation, interestingly enough, that's taking place on UOC about library card usage. So, so when I was at Queens, we had approximately 2.5 million people that lived in Queens. Out of those 2.5 million people, we had at any one time, and we used to do this rolling analysis. At any one time, we had about 900,000 card holders, right? And that's with people, coming on and off the books, but it was pretty consistent. We had maybe 300,000 who were what we called active card users. And basically that was like anybody that had used the card within 6 months. And then as you just keep delving down, that number gets lower and lower and lower, right? And interestingly enough, when I was at Broward and even here in Las Vegas, we have, a similar setup, right? We had 1.7 million, users in, people who were eligible to, people lived in Broward. And then you could take like a third of that number, and those were your active card holders. You take a third of that, those were like the people that really use the library, right? Or actually that were using the card. And the same thing is happening here in Las Vegas. So I've kind of come up with and as I ask my colleagues, that's kind of what it looks like, right? So we have people who we have, all the residents. You have this percentage of people who have library cards, who get the library card, who don't use the library card, right? Because you only have a third of the people that have used it or use it within, any one period of time. And then you delve even lower, and then you get to like your power users, who are probably like 100,000 people that are really, really using the library resources, like checking out books. That doesn't include programs, right? That doesn't include the people that are coming to programs. I'm only specifically talking about library card, like borrowers who are borrowing material. But the numbers are pretty consistent. In that manner, Brian, when it comes to what I've seen at 3 library systems in and over pretty much a 10-year period of time, that those numbers were consistent. And that's why I think, I know when I mentioned earlier, one of my continued initiatives are always around making sure that I get as much cost per circ down, right? So that I don't buy, $100 book, and the $100 book only sits on the shelf.
It never gets circulated.
It never gets circulated, one. Or that it circs one time and the cost per circ is in $100, right? Which happens actually. I mean, these are actual things that happen. And so when I look, that's why when I look at resources, physical books, digital books, whatever it is, music, movies, or anything, or even databases, I'm really looking at the usage. And so one way to do that is to continue to expand the number of library card holders, right? This month, which is ending, but this month is actually National Library Card Sign-Up Month. So this is September is National Library Card Sign-Up Month. So if you don't have a library card, go get a library card at your local library, either physical or digital. And so one of the things that I'm doing here in Vegas is we're not just stopping with September. We're having a program, and you might have seen it, Brian. It's called Get Carded. Right. So we have a Get Carded campaign where we're not only challenging people to get a library card this month, but we're challenging people all year round. And then we're working with our partners here in Las Vegas to actually have them sign up every member of their staff, employees who don't have a library card. We're challenging them to get a library card. And so we've already got several organizations, some that have signed up all their staff in like a week to get library cards. So the way then to do that is something that we just talked about regarding BISG is education.
Right.
Is telling, and the way that we do that, the library, is we get them a library card, and then we're able to communicate and market and talk to them about our programs and services and resources.
And that sounds like the kind of thing that neighbor talking to neighbor, or coworker talking to coworker. It's a lot easier than trying to explain to people what a library is and why it works.
Yes, yes.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, Kelvin, and I don't want to limit you to just one takeaway, but maybe a different question, which is, what would you love to see happen as a result of this discussion? I mean, what's an outcome that we can try to commit ourselves to?
I think that continued commitment is libraries educating publishers, talking about what libraries have going on. Publishers, go to your libraries. Go to the library, ask the library folks, volunteer in the library, really understand, the things that the nuances of what happens in in an urban library or in a rural library. Participate in your library. And when I say participate, be intentional about it, right? Not just think about as you learn about libraries, more about libraries, because people think they know a lot about libraries.
Right.
But once you learn about libraries, then I think you'll have a better idea of how your products can be used in the libraries. And don't assume Don't assume you got to ask the questions. What works in one community, what I've, and I, as a library director, I mentioned those differences and those similarities. And as you can see by, I'm sharing those experiences because what's worked in one community doesn't always work in another community. And I've learned that. I'm learning that even every day, right? I launched a lot of initiatives in Broward, and I brought some of those initiatives to Vegas. And guess what? Some of them didn't work. We had to retool. We had to rethink how we approached it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so that's what I would, that's what I would hope would be a takeaway. And hopefully, I've shared something that is, spark something, or giving folks an opportunity to reflect on, their relationships with libraries and how to move forward.
Well, thank you for making the time today. I know that you've already had a busy day, and you still have a few more things to get done. But we
Thanks,
really
Brian.
appreciate you making the time, sharing your thoughts, and also making us better informed, not just about urban libraries, but about libraries in general and the important role they play in the supply chain. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Yep, you too.